They had studied every species in the galaxy, but none disturbed them like humanity. The terrifying truth? Even the High Council dared not speak of it. The chamber was vast, its ceiling hidden in swirling mists of artificial gravity fields. Inside, 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in solemn silence. The Galactic High Council was rarely unanimous about anything. But today, there was no debate, only dread. At the center of the room, a holographic projection flickered to life. It displayed a blue-green planet spinning slowly in space, Earth. A frail, insectoid diplomat known as Sci-Fi Prime spoke first. His voice, a dry rattle, barely concealed his unease. We have conquered war. We have mastered disease. We have tamed the very forces of nature. And yet, we fear them. A murmuring ripple passed through the council. Some refused to meet his gaze, others shifted uncomfortably in their hovering seats. A towering reptilian general, Vorak of the Ketheri, scoffed. Fear? Of a primitive species barely beyond their own solar system? Absurd. Sci-Fi shook his head. You do not understand. It is not their weapons we fear. It is not their technology. It is not even their ambition. It is something deeper. Something we have yet to explain. The hologram shifted, displaying footage from various encounters with humans. A lone astronaut repairing a broken space station with only a piece of metal and sheer determination. A human soldier, smiling despite overwhelming odds, refusing to surrender even when completely outmatched. A scientist laughing in the face of an experiment designed to break his mind. Vorak's expression darkened. He had seen these reports before. He had dismissed them. But the patterns were undeniable. They do not break. Sci-Fi whispered. They do not surrender. They endure, even when they should not. The council chamber fell silent. Then, a decision was made. We must study them further. A human must be taken, observed, tested, understood. Before the session ended, an order was given: find a human subject. Discover the source of their resilience. Before it is too late. Final scene, the hook ends with a twist. A week later. Deep in the void of space, a lone human research vessel floated near an unexplored nebula. The crew, unaware of the Council's secret decree, went about their daily tasks. Then, a sudden flash of light. A gravitational distortion. Before anyone could react, the ship was surrounded by alien vessels. Inside, standing calmly as alarms blared around him, was Dr. Ethan Cole. The ship shook violently. An unknown force pulled him into darkness. But as he felt himself being taken, as his vision blurred from the energy fields surrounding him, Ethan smiled. Not in fear. But in amusement. Dr. Ethan Cole awoke to an eerie silence. The sterile glow of artificial lights hummed above him, illuminating a vast, circular chamber. The walls pulsed with an otherworldly energy, shifting in color as if alive. He tried to move, but a faint gravitational pressure held him in place, not restraints, but something subtler, more sophisticated. He was being observed. Ethan took a slow breath, forcing his heartbeat to steady. He'd been in tight situations before, but nothing quite like this. Still, one thought lingered in his mind. They think I should be afraid. A shadow moved behind the translucent walls. Then another. Shapes, tall and unnatural, shifting with an unnerving grace. The observers. Finally, a voice echoed through the chamber, resonating inside his skull rather than through the air. Human. You are in no danger. But you are an anomaly. One we must understand. Ethan smirked despite himself. I get that a lot. A pause. The unseen speaker had not expected such a response. The silence stretched long enough that Ethan imagined a room full of aliens exchanging confused glances. Then, the voice continued. "We will begin." Without warning, the gravity around him intensified. Not enough to crush him, but enough to make every movement a struggle. It was oppressive, a force beyond anything found on Earth. A test. Ethan exhaled sharply. "So that's how it is, huh?" He adjusted, flexing his muscles, shifting his weight. His instincts kicked in: adapt, endure, overcome. A faint chuckle escaped his lips. "This all you got?" Inside the observation chamber, Sci-Fi Prime and Vorak of the Ketheri watched in stunned silence. "He should be panicking," Sci-Fi murmured, his voice betraying unease. Vorak's claws tapped against the console. "Increase gravity. Twice the standard limit." The machine obeyed. The weight intensified. The human gritted his teeth, but he did not yield. 3 times. Still, he did not collapse. 4 times. Ethan's breathing was heavy now, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. But his expression had changed. He was grinning. Sci-Fi turned sharply to Vorak. "What is wrong with him? Why does he smile?" Vorak did not answer. He was too focused on the human in the chamber, on the terrifying realization dawning upon him. This was not resistance. This was enjoyment. The experiment was meant to test the human's limits. But the truth was now clear. He hadn't even reached them yet. The chamber was silent, except for the rhythmic sound of Ethan's breathing. The pressure was immense, the gravitational force pressing down on his bones like 1,000 invisible hands. But he kept moving. Step. Step. Each movement was a defiance, a challenge thrown back at the unseen observers. Inside the control room, Vorak and Sci-Fi watched in stunned silence. "This is not possible," Sci-Fi whispered. "No species has ever remained standing past 3 times standard gravity. We are at 4. Vorak's claws twitched against the console. "And yet he walks." Ethan clenched his jaw, adjusting his stance. His muscles screamed for relief, but he knew his own limits better than they did. The aliens expected him to break. But that was the thing about humans. Pain wasn't a barrier. It was a challenge. The control room, a growing fear. Vorak turned to his subordinate. "Increase the pressure." 5G. Sci-Fi hesitated. "Sir, that level is..." "Do it." A low hum filled the chamber. Ethan grunted as the force doubled, his movements slowing, his body screaming in protest. But then something happened that made Vorak's blood run cold. Ethan laughed. It was low at first, then grew louder. Not the nervous chuckle of someone trying to mask fear. No. This was different. This was enjoyment. "You aliens really don't get it, do you?" Ethan muttered, rolling his shoulders as if preparing for a workout. "Get what?" Vorak's voice came through the speakers, laced with barely concealed concern. Ethan lifted his head, his gaze unwavering. "This isn't the first time humans have pushed past their limits. This isn't new for us." He clenched his fists and took another step forward. The ground beneath him cracked. Vorak flinched. "Enough. Cease the experiment." But Ethan wasn't stopping. "Something breaks." Warning sirens flared across the observation deck. Readouts flickered in alarm. The gravity stabilizers, engineered to test the strongest species in the galaxy, were struggling to keep up. The system wasn't breaking Ethan. Ethan was breaking the system. Sci-Fi stared in disbelief. "Sir, we have to stop him. If the stabilizers fail..." Boom. A loud crack split the air. A blinding burst of light flared across the chamber. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the gravity regulators overloaded and shut down. The weight vanished in an instant. Ethan stumbled forward as the pressure lifted, rolling his shoulders as if he had just finished an intense workout. He exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow, before looking up at the observation deck. Well, that was fun. Vorik and Sci-Fi stood frozen. Their experiment, their carefully controlled test of a human's limits, had not only failed, but it had backfired spectacularly. The most terrifying realization of all? They still had no idea how much stronger he could get. The atmosphere in the control room was thick with unease. Even though the gravity stabilizers had shut down, the lingering tension could be felt in every corner of the observation deck. Vorik stared at the human below, his mind racing with calculations, theories, and one frightening conclusion. Ethan was more than just a test subject. The command center, panic spreads. "We need to re-engage the gravity field," Sci-Fi muttered, eyes scanning the readouts. But Vorik didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the human. Ethan stood there, adjusting his clothes as if nothing had happened. As the last of the vibrations from the failing systems died down, his eyes scanned the room, his gaze narrowing as he looked directly at the cameras. "What's the matter?" Ethan called out, his voice calm but taunting. "Can't take the heat?" Vorik, despite himself, felt a chill run through him. It wasn't just Ethan's physical strength that was terrifying, it was the undeniable certainty in his words. The human confidence that made it clear, deep down, that he knew his own power. That was something no alien species had ever encountered. The aliens who had been watching the human for months had expected fear, submission, even rebellion, but not this. Not this quiet, defiant confidence. They had underestimated him in a way that left them exposed. How do you defeat something you can't understand? Vorik wondered, his mind struggling to keep pace with the situation. The decision, a turning point. Suddenly, the decision that Vorik had been avoiding became clear. If the humans were as strong as they appeared, stronger, in fact, than any species they had encountered, then they couldn't afford to let this experiment continue. The technology, the systems, the alliances with other species, they all depended on the truth of the human's potential. If this continued, it could mean the end of their dominance. Vorik's claws flexed against the controls. "We need to act, and we need to act now." Sci-Fi, his voice filled with growing alarm, responded, "What do you mean?" "We make contact." Vorik's voice was low, the weight of his words settling heavily over the room. "Contacting the human." Ethan was still standing there, unconcerned, as the monitors flashed and alarms continued to blare. He couldn't hear the aliens, couldn't sense the tension building in the control room, but he knew one thing. The game had changed. "You want to talk?" Ethan muttered, walking slowly to the center of the chamber, staring at the walls. Behind him, the aliens fidgeted uneasily as Vorik stepped forward to the microphone. "Human, if you are willing, we would like to extend an offer of cooperation." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Cooperation?" He laughed. "What, you want me to help you conquer the universe or something?" There was an uncomfortable silence. Vorik's eyes flickered with uncertainty before he forced himself to continue. "What we are asking for is more than simple cooperation. We have underestimated you. You are stronger, more capable, and more resilient than we thought possible. We would like to offer you a place among the greatest of the galaxy." Ethan's smile vanished, replaced by an intense look of calculation. "You're offering me power. But you have no idea what I could do with it." The words hung in the air. The aliens watched, unsure whether they were about to win a powerful ally, or unleash a force they couldn't control. The suspenseful turn. Ethan took another step forward, his feet now pressing against the scorched floor of the chamber. He was still breathing heavily from the strain, but his posture remained unchanged. "Tell me one thing, alien," he said, his voice low and dangerous. What do you fear more than anything? For the first time, Vorik hesitated. The question was unexpected, and the answer even more so. Sci-Fi watched with wide eyes as Vorik's voice faltered. We fear, humans. The answer echoed through the chamber. The realization hit them like a blow to the chest. The true strength of humanity wasn't just their power. It was their endurance. Their unpredictability. Their will to survive. A dangerous path. Then why offer me power? Ethan scoffed. Why not just lock me up and be done with it? Vorik remained silent. The experiment had already gone wrong. Their next move would determine everything. Sci-Fi looked at Vorik, waiting for the decision. We must proceed carefully. Vorik clenched his fists. No. We offer him what we promised. We need him, or the galaxy may belong to humans sooner than we think. The chamber was silent, save for the soft hum of the alien machines running behind the walls. Ethan's words had left a heavy atmosphere in their wake, an unsettling blend of uncertainty and fear. The aliens had underestimated him at every turn, and now they were facing a reality they hadn't prepared for. In the cold, sterile room, Vorik and Sci-Fi exchanged uneasy glances. Their previous belief that they controlled the situation had crumbled, replaced with a creeping doubt. This wasn't just an experiment anymore, it was a pivotal moment that could shape the fate of the galaxy. The struggle for control. Ethan's voice broke through the tension. So, you think you can control me, huh? You think I'm just some pawn in your game? He was standing tall now, as if the gravity of the situation didn't weigh him down. There was no fear, no hesitation, only a relentless confidence that unnerved the aliens even more. Vorik stepped forward, his voice calm but stern. You misunderstand, human. We are not here to control you. We are here to offer you power, influence, and a chance to shape the future. His tone was almost pleading, as if trying to convince himself as much as Ethan. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Power, huh? He stepped closer, his boots echoing across the floor. I've seen what happens when people try to control power. It always goes wrong. You're asking me to join forces with you, but all I hear is manipulation. Sci-Fi shifted nervously, his tentacles twitching as he scanned Ethan's body language. We would never manipulate you. We offer you an alliance, one where you can have a say in the future of all species. You will be one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Ethan shook his head. Power isn't the problem. The problem is what people do with it. He paused, glancing between the two aliens. I've seen what your kind does when it's in charge. I don't need your power to change things. I just need to know how far you're willing to go to stop me from using it against you. An unexpected proposal. There was a long silence, the tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. Vorik's mind raced. Ethan wasn't the naive human they had expected. He was dangerous. Not because of his strength, but because of his ability to see through their plans and expose their vulnerabilities. Perhaps we have made a mistake, Vorik finally said, his voice laced with a rare hint of humility. Maybe power isn't enough. Maybe we should have been more open with you from the start. Ethan tilted his head, sensing an opening. What do you mean? Vorik lowered his voice, as though confessing a secret. What we fear isn't just your physical strength. It's your capacity for change. You are unpredictable. You don't fit into any of our equations. Your spirit is what terrifies us. If you stand against us, you could destroy everything we've built. Ethan's eyes flickered with a dangerous glint. I stand for what's right. I'm not here to destroy everything. But if your plans don't change, I'll make sure they do. Sci-Fi let out a sharp hiss, clearly displeased with the direction the conversation was taking. You don't understand, he spat. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about survival. You cannot win this battle alone. But Ethan wasn't swayed. I don't need to win a battle. I just need to make sure you lose. The moment of truth. A sudden, jarring sound interrupted the conversation, a loud, crashing noise reverberating through the walls of the station. The ship's emergency alarms began to blare, red lights flashing in every corner of the room. Vorik immediately turned toward the monitors, his eyes wide with panic. What is happening? Sci-Fi quickly tapped at the controls, but it was too late. The station had already gone into lockdown. A deep, rumbling sound echoed as the walls began to pulse with an eerie, ominous energy. The systems were going haywire, and they had no idea why. Ethan, Vorik demanded, turning toward the human. What did you do? Ethan smirked, unbothered by the chaos unfolding around him. I didn't do anything. But I guess you should have expected a little resistance. For the first time, the aliens understood. The human hadn't just been playing their game. He had anticipated their every move. They had thought they were manipulating him, but he had been manipulating them all along. A reckoning. As the station continued to tremble under the mysterious force, the lights flickered and the alarms grew louder. Ethan stood tall, his confidence unshaken. You want to offer me power, huh? Well, here's the thing, you've just given me everything I need to take control. But I don't need to take over. I don't need to fight you. All I need to do is expose you for what you truly are. The room fell into a deep silence as the realization dawned on Vorik. The human didn't just have physical strength or intelligence, he had something far more dangerous. He had the ability to break them from the inside out. Ethan was more than just a threat. He was the beginning of the end. The unexpected twist. Just as Vorik was about to speak, the station shook violently once more. This time, the vibrations were far more intense, and the power systems flickered out completely. The lights dimmed, leaving the room in near darkness. In the eerie silence that followed, Ethan spoke again, his voice a low growl. Your systems are compromised. You can't control this station anymore. Vorik's eyes went wide with fear. What have you done? Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he just watched as the aliens scrambled to regain control, their panic mounting. They had underestimated him, but it was too late to turn back now. The consequences of underestimating humanity. Ethan knew that he had pushed the aliens to their breaking point, but he wasn't finished yet. He wasn't here to just survive. He was here to change things. He took a deep breath, his voice calm as ever. You've already lost. And in that moment, the aliens realized the true weight of their mistake. The alien station was on the brink of collapse. Power systems were failing, lights flickering and sparking. The once calming hum of the station's core had turned into a frantic whir, punctuated by the deep rumble of systems malfunctioning. Ethan stood in the center of the control room, calm in the face of the chaos surrounding him. The aliens, in a rare moment of vulnerability, were scrambling to regain control, but the situation had spiraled out of their hands. The alien panic. Vorik and Sci-Fi exchanged desperate glances, their minds racing as the reality of the situation set in. The station, a symbol of their power and dominance, was unraveling before them. The humans, Ethan in particular, had managed to breach their defenses and expose the cracks in their otherwise impeccable facade. We can't hold it together much longer, Sci-Fi growled, his voice tight with panic. The fail-safes are activated. The station is going to implode within hours. Vorik's eyes narrowed, sweat beading on his forehead. If we don't fix this, we lose everything. He turned to Ethan, a mix of fear and anger in his gaze. This isn't over, human. You may have disrupted our systems, but that won't stop us from destroying you. Ethan chuckled softly, his eyes filled with a quiet resolve. Destroy me? I'm not the one about to implode a multi-billion credit station, am I? It was a cruel irony. The aliens had underestimated Ethan so thoroughly that, in the end, they had sealed their own fate. They had built their empire on the foundation of superior technology, dominance, and control. But Ethan had proven that none of that mattered when it came to confronting a spirit unyielding in the face of fear. A turning point. As the tension between them thickened, the monitor screens suddenly flickered to life. A series of emergency alerts flashed across the walls, signaling the approach of an inevitable end. Ethan stepped toward the screen and tapped it lightly. Looks like your systems are failing in more ways than one. Do you think you've won? Vorik spat, his voice dripping with venom. We will destroy you before you can even celebrate. But Ethan wasn't focused on their threats. His attention was on the countdown clock rapidly ticking down to 0. They were running out of time. If you want to keep your lives, Ethan said, his voice cold but unwavering, you need to stop trying to fight me and start thinking about how you're going to survive this. Sci-Fi's eye stalks twitched nervously. We can't reverse the fail-safes now. You've already triggered the sequence. We're beyond saving. His voice was shaky now, his confidence shattered. Ethan took a slow breath, the weight of what he was about to do settling heavily on his shoulders. Then you need to listen closely. I'm giving you a choice. Surrender now and make it out alive. You might lose everything, but at least you'll be able to start over. You keep pushing, and I won't be responsible for what happens next. For a long moment, the alien stood still, unable to process the gravity of Ethan's ultimatum. Finally, Vorik spoke, his voice low, almost defeated. And what exactly do you want in return for our survival? Ethan's eyes darkened. Your cooperation. I won't be the one to destroy your empire. But I will tear it down, piece by piece, if you don't listen. The ultimate choice. A long silence stretched out between them. The station's countdown was nearing its final seconds, each passing moment heavy with the pressure of what was to come. Sci-Fi, usually so confident in his race's superiority, looked to Vorik, his expression now one of exhaustion and fear. We don't have any other choice, do we? Vorik looked at Ethan, then back at the failing station. His mind was a battlefield, torn between the survival of his people and his ego. The arrogance that had fueled his race's dominance was now their downfall. We surrender, he muttered, his voice breaking with a rare vulnerability. But make no mistake, human. This is not the end. You have won a battle, but the war is far from over. Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. Then let's make sure your people remember this lesson. You think you control the galaxy, but you can't control humanity. Not anymore. A new hope. The aliens reluctantly initiated the process of shutting down the station's self-destruct mechanism, their alien fingers trembling over the controls. The tension in the room was palpable, but as the seconds ticked by, it became clear that they had averted the immediate disaster. The countdown ceased. For the first time, the aliens had been forced to surrender, not through force, but by acknowledging the resilience and spirit of humanity. Ethan hadn't used weapons, hadn't resorted to physical violence. Instead, he had outsmarted them, outlasted them, and shown them that there are forces in the universe that cannot be controlled by technology alone. A glimmer of change. As the dust settled and the emergency lights flickered back on, Ethan stood tall, his face grim but determined. We'll leave your station intact, for now, he said. But remember this moment, because it will be the first of many. Vorik and Sci-Fi were left standing in stunned silence, their pride shattered, their plans in ruins. For the first time, they saw the truth in Ethan's words. The last remnants of the alien empire, once so certain of their unshakable dominion, were now scattered like leaves in the wind. The station, once a symbol of their power, was now just another abandoned relic, proof that no force, no matter how technologically advanced, could ever fully suppress humanity's indomitable spirit. The calm before the storm. The following weeks were tense, not just for the aliens but for humanity as well. Ethan, now a key player in the struggle against the alien forces, worked with a coalition of human leaders to rebuild the shattered station. But his mind was never far from the alien empire, which was already beginning to regroup. "We've won a battle, not the war," Ethan reminded his team as they worked. The weight of his words hung heavily in the air. He had seen firsthand the depth of the aliens' desperation. They wouldn't stop, they would regroup and strike again, but humanity had gained the upper hand, at least for now. Ethan's resolve didn't waver. He knew that if humanity was to win this war, it wasn't just about outsmarting the aliens. It was about proving that no matter the odds, human beings would rise to the occasion, adapt, and fight for their survival. A world united. In the wake of the aliens' surrender, there was a brief, almost hopeful peace. The message of humanity's strength reverberated across the galaxy, reaching even the farthest corners where resistance had once seemed impossible. Human ingenuity, resilience, and courage had made the impossible possible. Ethan addressed the world leaders, his words a clarion call to action. "We are no longer isolated, divided by borders or conflicts. We stand united against a common enemy that seeks to subjugate us, to break our will. But we have proven, together, that no one can break us." His words stirred something deep within the hearts of his fellow humans. The world, once fractured and at war with itself, found new hope. Nations that had been divided by political strife began to work together, sharing technology, resources, and intelligence. The human race had learned, through sheer necessity, the power of unity. The alien retreat. On the other side of the galaxy, the alien race was in disarray. Their empire, once sprawling and omnipotent, was beginning to crumble. For the first time in their history, they were facing the reality that they had underestimated the humans, had failed to account for their refusal to yield. Vorik and Sci-Fi, now stripped of their former pride, found themselves in an uneasy alliance with the remnants of their people. Their once immense fleet had been scattered, their technology weakened, and the very foundation of their society was on the verge of collapse. "We are not finished," Vorik said, his voice harsh and filled with venom. "We will rebuild, stronger than ever." But Sci-Fi, his once unshakable confidence now tinged with doubt, shook his head. "We cannot rebuild if we keep underestimating humanity. They have something we do not, a will to fight for their survival, no matter the cost." The final decision. In the face of the alien retreat, humanity's leaders knew the road ahead would be difficult. But they also knew that they had been given a gift, the gift of time. Time to strengthen their alliances, to advance their technology, and most importantly, to prepare for the next conflict. Ethan, ever vigilant, stood at the front of this new human movement. He had seen the fear in the aliens' eyes when they had faced his resolve, but he also understood that their eventual regrouping was inevitable. The victory they had won was temporary, but it had given humanity something more valuable than just a fleeting respite, it had given them hope. He turned to his team, a quiet resolve in his eyes. "The battle isn't over, but we've shown them something they'll never forget. We've shown them that the more they try to crush us, the stronger we become." As Ethan looked out into the vast expanse of space, the same stars that had once seemed so distant now felt closer than ever. Humanity had fought to preserve its future, and though the galaxy was vast and the challenges were great, it was now clear that no alien force could ever extinguish the light of human determination. The message for the ages. As the final stages of the recovery process unfolded, humanity's victory became more than just a turning point in a war, it became a defining moment for future generations. Ethan's voice, steady and calm, reverberated across the world in a final broadcast. "Today, we stand as one species, united not by the technology we wield or the resources we control, but by the simple fact that we will not give up. That is what terrifies our enemies more than anything. Not our weapons, not our fleets, but our unbreakable will to survive." The broadcast ended, but the impact of his words lingered in the hearts and minds of every listener. It was a lesson that would echo through the ages: human will is the most formidable force in the universe.